morning, everybody. Let me introduce you to myself. My name is Alan Whaley. Back in 1986, I graduated as a dentist from Manchester University. I practiced dentistry for about 6 months, absolutely hated it, and my first job to find out what I want to do in life, I was the parts delivery driver at the local Toyota dealership. And 32 years later, I'm still in the industry, which I'm totally passionate about. About a year ago, probably about 2 years ago, we recognized the automotive industry is going through its biggest revolution. And what we looked at is there was no association for the automotive industry in the Middle East, and that's when we formed EMENA. We're proud to say that we are 100% unbiased and independent. We exist to help the industry to raise its success and prosperity throughout the Middle East and North Africa. The association is for manufacturers, dealer importers, third-party partners, Michelin tires, Bosch systems, etc., and the wonderful professional people that work within the industry. The next revolution that is coming upon us, it's called the ACES. A lot of the automotive research institutes refer to it, which is the autonomous, connected, electric, and shared services. Some of them called CASE. If anybody from Mercedes, the Germans, they prefer to call it CASE. The American call it ACES. Whatever we want to call it, this is the new revolution that is happening.
Ik ben op zoek naar onderhoudstechnici voor de Volvo-fabriek in Gent.
200 job openings were announced on social media, inviting everyone to come and check out the first car that recruits its own engineers. To conduct the interviews, we tapped into the car's technology.
Welcome, Oliver. Glad to see you put on your blue shirt for the interview. Can you show me where my electric compressor is?
Sure. Here.
Please allow me to play some piano music to make you feel more comfortable. Tell me, why should I hire you?
I've been passionate about coding.
By applying AI, we could actually test social and technical skills and make unbiased evaluations of all applicants. These were sent to Volvo's HR managers for further interviews.
Any HR managers in the room? You can borrow that vehicle if you want.
Volvo present.
Okay. Just to look at some figures in terms of the amount of being spent in investment activities. Up to the year 2013, the average was 4.3 billion. That significantly moved to about 25.3 billion by 2017. At 2018, it actually jumped to about 32 billion. And that shows you the acceleration in terms of investment into the future, into ACES. Interestingly, if you look here, the connectivity is getting the largest share, the lion's share, such as backend and cybersecurity, user interface, telematics, sharing solutions, gesture, voice recognition. There's a very good reason behind why about 40% of the total amount being spent is being spent on connectivity, which we will talk about in the next few slides. Now, whatever happens, there's a lot of fog. Where are we going? What's the future going to be like? We've identified 3 trends that are for sure, no matter what the landscape or the ecosystem is going to happen. And the first one is the customer's desire from actually owning a vehicle to other alternatives. The first one is, obviously, first of all, ownership is expensive. Total cost of ownership, servicing, insuring the vehicle, parking the vehicle, fines, etc. There are new models coming, which is pay-as-you-go, on-demand, ride-sharing, part ownership, etc. So you don't have to buy a vehicle, and the desire to buy a vehicle is no longer there, especially for the younger generations. Then you've got apps like Movil and Wimi in Finland, whereby before you set off on your journey, the app will tell you what's the best route, what's the best mode of transport, and should you wish, you can book it all together. And we spoke about this yesterday. If it's really too congested, then it suggests that you work from home. Self-driving vehicles, obviously, and as Tariq showed us, it will have a completely different meaning the way vehicles are driven. Not how we drive them, the vehicles, how they are driven, because you no longer have to drive them. Obviously, traditional models continue. Petrol heads, the dying breed like me, will still continue, especially in the high-end and used cars. Some people will still want to buy and own a car and play with it on a Friday afternoon. And then the most important thing for the younger generation, they want variety. They want that instant moments. Go to any fine dining restaurant and you'll find out people, before they eat, this is more important that they take a picture of the food and they post it. Really doesn't matter how the food tastes like. That's not important. An interesting phenomenon. Then you've got the manufacturers. A lot of the manufacturers, they're starting their own ownership model. Audi, for example, start an open relationship with your car. It's all about the relationship. It's all about the variety. It's all about the instant moment. So you don't have to stick to an Audi A4 or A6. You can have any of the, across the range with them. People are taking it further, whereby I don't have to drive an Audi. I'd like to drive an Audi, BMW, Mercedes, whatever the case may be. So, in terms of the implications, we know in the Middle East, people will not stop having cars. Yes, they will own, or they'll have lesser cars in their household before they get to the stage whereby they do not own a single vehicle. And there are new business models coming. The automotive industry is going through disruption. They're going to have to partner with new entrants. They're going to have to change the relationship between OEMs and distributors. However, on the positive side, there'll be less pollution. As Tariq said, global and economic, global situations, the carbon monoxide footprint, it'll be significantly less. There will be no more worrying about your car maintenance, your insurance, your parking, your traffic fines. And by 2030, around 80% of the miles covered in US, China, and Europe will be covered by self-driving vehicles. The second one is the reorganization from selling cars into managing transportation assets. What do we mean by that? Here is the middleman. The value chain is changing, especially for the Middle East. It's very, very relevant because a lot of the value chain is the middleman, defined as the middleman in the Middle East. And we'll look at how that is going to change over the next few years. So we're moving from selling parts. The traditional business model is you sell the car, you sell the parts, you sell the service, you sell the insurance, the bank loan agreement. That is completely changing because a lot of the OEMs, they're either partnering with each other. 5 or 10 years ago, that would have been unheard of. They are also in the trail of buying companies or going into joint ventures with Silicon Valley new startups. And just like the 1900s, there's a new technology, there's a new ecosystem. Again, when Elon Musk started his journey, all he wanted to do is to produce cleaner cars and electric vehicles. What he didn't realize, like the likes of Henry Ford, that he's going to change completely the ecosystem and the impact that it has on all the other industries. The horse carriage shop, just as it's closed at the beginning of the 20th century, the existing business model will die, and we know that for a fact. New relationships has to be formed between importers, dealers, suppliers, and between the customer, which is the most important, the consumer, and the dealers. Moving on, banks and insurance, they no longer have to deal with private individuals because it'll be ride sharing, it'll be part ownership, etc. Dealers will have to find themselves a new niche in the value chain, and that's very, very important. That's a big disruptor. Glad to say a lot of the family-owned businesses here, they all started Office of the Future to find themselves where do they carve, and we work with some of them, in terms of deciding where they're going to go because they know the existing model will no longer exist. And you either disrupt or be disrupted. Be agile, be flexible, otherwise you're gonna die. We spoke yesterday about the Kodak, the Blockbuster, the New York cab company that literally found themselves, dying overnight. Moving on, a very successful business model. Emirates Airlines, the world's biggest and the most successful airline in the world. How many airplanes do you think they own? How many? Zero. You're absolutely right. They own zero airplane. In fact, what they also do, they pay for the engine by the hour. The engine is the most expensive and the most maintenance-thirsty part of the airplane. They pay for the engines by the hour. Okay? And that's the business model that the automotive industry is going through. The third one, which is the rapid distribution of profit centers, again, to new profit centers, and we'll talk about those. By 2030, as you can see, 50% of what makes profit at the moment is likely to be disrupted. The yellow bits are the new profit centers, are the new initiatives that will create profit. As you can see, by 2030, that is going to be rapidly disrupted. So things like the things that are dying, your traditional taxi services, your traditional new vehicle sales, that is just going to absolutely dwindle its way down. So we know profits have been declining from this slide that we saw because, simply people are not buying as many cars. People are very savvy in terms of where they spend their money and how they spend their money. People's attitudes is changing and the relationship with their brands are changing. Brand loyalty is no longer there. The revenue falls in the new business, business models. OEMs, for example, today they make about 1 cent for every mile covered. With a new business model, that can go up anything from 10 to 25% by probably the year 2030. And that's why they are racing so fast to get into that and to own the technology. We spoke about connectivity and why connectivity is very, very important, because connectivity is the biggest area whereby OEMs can monetize. First of all, once you have the connectivity, then you understand and you can profile your customer, you understand their behaviors, their buying patterns, etc. In here, you've got 5 areas. The people, the new business model. When you generate that data, you can monetize it. Then when you transmit it safely into some server somewhere in the world, that again can be monetized. When you aggregate it, when you develop it, and then when you market it back, either business to business or business to consumers. That's where the money is, that's where the connectivity is. Okay. So, massive amount of restructuring of the traditional model. As we said, it's dying. Tesla, for example, realized that they don't need showrooms across the world. They closed the showrooms, and as a result, now you can buy a Tesla for $35,000. What that shows you is the sense of urgency and the agility that that company has. And OEMs has to learn that, and we spoke about this yesterday. They're going to have to move much faster, including dealers, importers, especially in this part of the world. They're going to have to develop new profit centers, new partnerships is going to have to be agreed with new entrants, and a higher level of customer satisfaction needed. The public will not allow you, will be very, very unforgiving because the choices will be absolutely immense. To give you an idea, Uber, it is predicted that it will be the biggest fleet operator by 2035. Why? Because what you can do, instead of ordering your Uber, you can order your autonomous vehicle and then Uber will arrive. So imagine if you're sitting across the table from the purchasing manager at Toyota and you say to him, I'd like to buy 4 million vehicles. Imagine the level of discount you will be wanting from that company. Okay? So the business model is completely changing. However, the likes of Uber, Airbnb, the beauty about it is they have no assets, they have no sunk cost because they don't own a single, they are the biggest taxi company in the world and they don't own a single taxi. Airbnb, the biggest provider of accommodation, they don't own a single room. So this is where the difference comes in. Thank you. I'll open it for questions.